Are we ready to begin?
Yes, we can.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this second day of the capacity building workshop on forest management and in relation to water regulation in the Drin Basin. It is the second day today with some further presentation, including some more practical guidelines. And just to recall that the workshop is being held in the context of the Nexus project for Southeast Europe, financed by the Austrian Development Agency and implemented by Global Water Partnership Mediterranean in partnership with the UNEC. I give the floor to Vojislav for a recap of yesterday and an outline of today's session. Vojislav?
Thank you, Tassos. Good morning from my side. It's good to see you again today. Yesterday, we had interesting topics discussed related to the theme of the workshop. We had a presentation from CMVP side on interlinkages of biomass production and in relation to forest, water and energy. Then we discussed about the compliance on forest policies and practice in these countries in line with the pan-European criteria. And then we had very interesting presentation from Professor Blinkov discussing the benefits of sustainable forest management through other sectors, and also some nice examples for soil and water protection using in general some forestry measures and techniques. That was the first part of the day. Then we had a short discussion session and a short break, and then we started with presentations again from Mr. Henk Zinstra on overview of EU directives and forest water in line with forest and water, and what countries here in the region, especially in the Dream Basin, needs to do to be in line with these EU policies. Then we have a presentation from Professor Elvin Toromani on synergies on water management with other sectors, and it was given a detailed presentation on synergies and relations with biomass, with hydropower, with agriculture and tourism. Then we have some presentation related to unsustainable forest management practices and how they influence also other sectors and the nature in general. And then in the end, we were talking about the impact of climate change of forests in the region and what should we expect in the future and how we need to prepare for the future that will come. In the meantime, there was also some interesting discussions and comments from participants. There were some comments that there is a lack of data or that the presentations were somehow general, but this is envisaged as capacity development workshop. So we needed to have parts that are strictly, let's say, theoretical or giving some background for the topics that we discuss. Also today we will have interesting presentations, and I will share with you the first part of the agenda for today so that you can all see it. So after my introduction, we will have a presentation from Christopher Leiner from Federal Ministry of Agriculture, Regions and Tourism of Austria. And we will talk about protective forest in Austria, the policy framework and challenges in the future. I hope that you will like the presentation. And after that, we will have some presentation from Mr. Josef Kreček from Czech Technical University in Prague. He will talk about some examples and case studies of management of forestries in catchments of drinking water reservoirs, which is also a very interesting topic and interesting to hear how they are dealing with it. After that, we will have Professor Gerhard Schuler, and he will discuss and talk more about forest hydrology and management of forest and water in relation to the changing climate that we are living in and with the future challenges in front of us. After that, we will have also time for discussion and a short break. And the last part, which will be a little bit longer, is dedicated to GIS techniques and forest planning. Our colleague, Professor Ivan Mincher, will talk about GIS technologies in forest planning in relation to water regulation, innovative practices, and tools. More precise, there will be parts that will deal with forest management in immediate zone of water reservoirs. It will be one case study from North Macedonia. Then there will be a part talking about remote sensing techniques for water, soil, and forest monitoring and use of appropriate tools. Also part for change of detection of forest cover using basic available sources that is good for people that are in general practitioners they can follow and monitor what's going on related to forest and land change through Google Earth, Copernicus, forest management plans, and some other tools that will be presented by our colleague. And in the end, he will talk about use of GS techniques and decision trees for determining water runoff in order to determine intensity of cuts and how much it's allowed to intervene in one forest area, not to make damage to water quality and also to the soil. I think that we can start with our presenters. So after this, I will invite Mr. Christopher Leiner if he is ready to start his presentation.
Yes, hello, good morning from my side.
Hello.
I try to share my screen and I hope everybody is seeing the presentation. Is this right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Christoph Leiner and I'm working at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, Regions and Tourism in Austria and in the Department Torrent and Avalanche Control and Protective Forest Policy. I'm very pleased here to speak today about protective forests in Austria and the framework policy as well as future challenges in Austria. As you probably know, Austria is quite an alpine country, so about 2/3 of the whole country is covered by the Alps, and only 37% of the national territory is suitable for permanent settlement like agriculture or settlement and houses. And this is mainly the case in the eastern part of Austria, but also in the foothills and of course in the alpine valleys. So society makes many demands on forests in general, but besides of the use of timber or recreation or welfare functions, the protective function of forests is particularly the most important one. The protective forests acts as a green protective infrastructure, and it helps to protect against avalanches, rockfall, landslides, but also as a retention area for floods. And for us, a correct use of the term protective forest is important. This is a special thing in the German language. So we use the term protective forest and not protection forest. So for us, it's important that we need a stable protective forest for that this forest needs management, and we don't want to place those forests under nature conservation. So a management is very important to get those stable forests. Austria has a strict forestry law that has grown historically, and in the Forest Act from 1975, there are also newer ones, but this is the original. That the term protective forest is precisely defined, and it's differentiated into three categories. So there are site protective forests, object protective forests, and protective forests by regulatory decree. So as the name suggests, site protective forests mainly protect its own site from soil erosion. Object protective forests has a clear task of protect an object, for example, human settlements or a road or any other infrastructure. And the last term, protective forests by declaratory decree, this is a special type of an object protective forest, which is managed by strict conditions imposed by the forestry authority. So the focus here is also again on the protection of special objects. More than a third of the forest area in Austria, which is, by the way, about 48% of the country, has a protective function, and so the public interest in a stable and sustainable protective forest is particularly high. There are various players in the protective forests in Austria, and in addition, of course, of the forest owners, the forest authorities at both local, regional, but also federal level is very important. And as a federal institution, the Torrent and Avalanche Control is responsible for protection against natural hazards, and they also realize the projects by themselves. So they implement technical as well as forestry projects, but also land planning measures. Another players are, of course, hunters, but also tourism and recreational is getting more important. So what are the challenges, especially in Austria, in protective forests? The challenges in protective forests are manifold, I would say, and a large part of the protective forests require urgent care. For example, many trees are overaged. Young trees are often missing, but also the sites are very steep and often difficult to reach or to access. Often high game levels are responsible for damage to the trees. And of course, in addition to the multifunctional use of the forest, the pressure of the forest from tourism is increasing, and especially the pressure from tourism on the game, which could damage the trees. Last but not least, the climate change is a huge factor in the Austrian forests. As you all know, that the temperatures are rising, the weather extremes become even more extreme, and we also have increased risk of forest fires and changing site conditions. Of course, as you can imagine, the forest fires in Austria are much smaller than in the Mediterranean countries, but they are getting a challenge more and more. In many forests, also the forest stand will change, and also the tree species will change in the future. So here I have some pictures about huge disturbances in the protective forest due to windthrow. As you can imagine here on the pictures, if the forest is missing, natural hazards can arise more easily without the forest stand. Here I have a picture from a forest fire this summer. And as you can imagine, in the steep terrain, the root blades can easily slide off. You have much more erosion than usual, and you can also trigger rockfall. So for all those future challenges, there is an action program. It's called Protective Forests, or Forests Protect Us, from our government, and we're implementing this since this year. And in many milestones, we're trying to improve the protective function together with, of course, many stakeholders. This is very important to get all stakeholders in one boat and to work with them together. So we're also taking climate change into account. And I want just to, one example, I want to show you one measure we are working on. So here you can see a map of protective forests in Austria, and to improve the protective effect in the long term, we need first we need a good basis for planning where those potential protective forests are located. So of course we had previous protective forest maps, but the special thing on this map is that there are several modelings of natural hazards, such as avalanches, rockfall, or landslides. And these models will show those potential areas with a protective function. So the map is divided into forests with a direct protective function and an indirect protective function. And so with this map, the next step is to find out which areas are need to be managed most urgently. That's the next step we implement next year and the following years. So one possibility to improve those the protective function, especially on the areas where the management is needed most urgently, we have a thing that's called land management project, and they're implemented by the Federal Torrent and Avalanche Control and have a very long time horizon, up to 30 years. So they're implemented especially in areas with a high natural hazard potential, and especially in object protective forests. A special feature is that although they are mostly financed by the public sector, the interested parties must also make a financial contribution to this land management project. And in those land management projects, technical measures are combined with biological forestry measures. I have provided some pictures from one of many land management projects. Here you can see the famous Lake Hallstatt. Maybe you know the village of Hallstatt. And this project is very important because this project is very important. Here you can see the snow fence. It protects against avalanches, but also rockfall, and it supports the reforestation, which you can see here on this larch, until the young trees are big enough to take over the protective function again. So there was also a windrow here, and to manage that, we need technical measures. Here I also have another picture from a windrow. The barriers you can see here out of wood provides protection until the stable forest grows again. Yeah, thank you for your attention. I hope I was able to give a small overview of the important topic, protective functions in Austria. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leiner. We can come back to this presentation if there are any questions in the comments and answer question, but also if some of the participants wants to say something or ask something, the chat is available, so you can write also there. Now I will invite Mr. Josef Kreček to start with his presentation. Mr. Leiner.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I will try to share my screen. Is it? So it is my pleasure. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
It is my pleasure to share my presentation. I would like to introduce the activity of the working group on forest and water, which belongs to the European Forestry Commission Working Party on the Management of Mountain Watersheds, and then to provide you with one example from our case study on management of forest in drinking water reservoirs. So the aims of the working group are better understanding the forest and water relationship. We have a lot of data, and we would like to concentrate on water catchments where streams originate. And other topics are environmental services, participatory watershed management, involvement of citizens, and environmental education for sustainability with a couple of demonstration projects. Who is interested in this working group or to join our activities, you can contact directly Ms. Yuka Makino in FAO. She provides the secretariat for the working group. One of our outcomes is this book on ecosystem services in headwater catchments. And I would like now to take your attention to our case study, which concentrates on the management of forest in drinking water reservoirs affected by the acid atmospheric deposition. The case study located in the north part of the Czech Republic in the Jizera Mountains, which is just in the epicenter of the acidity in so-called black triangle of Europe, where the acid atmospheric deposition culminated particularly in the late 1980s. Now we are in the phase of recovery, especially with the control of sulfur emissions. The situation is better, but the prognosis is not very clean are expected also raising emissions of nitrogen. Here is the situation in the Isra Mountains. There are two important drinking water reservoirs for the water supply of the regional industrial centers. And problems in the 1980s and also in the 1990s were especially low pH values in drinking water because the water treatment were not able to manage pH meeting the standard of the World Health Organization, high content of toxic aluminium. It impacted mainly the biota, the stream water and reservoirs, so they were fishless, and also with drastic reduce in species of zooplankton, and species decreased, and some species overpopulated, like rotifers, doing terrible problems in water treatment plants. Forest in those drinking water reservoirs. Here in this map you can see native forest corresponding to the climax. So it was mixture of beech and spruce, Norway spruce, and in highest elevation it is zone of natural Norway spruce stands. But unfortunately, by the end of the 19th century, all those forests were transformed to spruce monocultures, spruce plantations with rather low ecological stability, and in the period of acid atmospheric deposition, those forests were very vulnerable to this situation. It was a remarkable dieback and clear cut of those catchments. Also, the priority in watershed management has been changing with time. In the beginning of the 20th century, it was especially flood control. After the deforestation by the end of the 19th century, at that time were constructed a couple of retention dams and program on reforestation. Since the 1970s, the dominant purpose was drinking water supply, and those retention dams were changing to water supply systems. And since the 1980s, the main aim is actually control of water quality and the biodiversity as well. So to manage forest, it is actually to follow this main goal. And we tried in this case study to identify stakeholders and to find a compromise what might be the best for the forestry management. Also, nowadays we are discussing the climate change impact in the horizon 2071, 2100. Of course, it is well known water yield might be reduced, increasing extreme events, changes in the seasonal runoff, reduced snow cover, and endangered stems of Norway spruce. In this picture, I would like to demonstrate that paradoxically, with the clear cut of spruce monocultures, the water quality improved in the stream water. This is the clear cut, and actually, with this clear cut pH in water increased in 1 unit, from 4 to 5 to 5 to 6, decreased the deposition of sulfur and nitrogen because forest canopy can increase 10 times or even more the open field deposition. An especially important role in this has fog precipitation in the upper part of the catchment. So to support water resources repair and to reduce the acid atmospheric deposition, we identified elevations higher than 900 meters, where very important for drip. It might be 10–15% of the precipitation that's measured by normal rain gauges. On the slopes below 25 degrees, it is possible to think about reduction of evapotranspiration, to change species to deciduous and not to full coverage, and to control runoff genesis on steeper slopes more than 25 degrees. It means to protect soil against erosion. And special attention is paid to riparian buffer zones, controlling the fringe effect. There is the width minimum 30 meters. It depends on the composition in the catchment. It might be, of course, wider to 100–150 meters. So the whole process was identification of stakeholders and trying roundtable debate, finding directorium of this, include all participants, and to try multi-criteria optimization to find the mission of the Water Act. So here in this table, I want not to trouble you with details. Of course, here are a couple of criteria developed by the committee. So it is water quality, water yield, flood prevention, biodiversity, timber yield, irrigation. Some weights decided, of course, by the roundtable debate. A rating of alternatives, for example, alternative A1, it is to respect 5 different zones, A2 only 3 different zones, A2 is just to respect the riparian buffer zone and in the whole catchment to do what is possible, and A1 is just not to control it and to find performance values and find the optimization. So for this case, the optimal for water quality development was respecting of 5 zones, riparian strips, zones of soil protection on higher slopes, evapotranspiration control, areas higher than 900 meters, very significant for drip. It can, in normal situation, increase water yield by this additional precipitation, but in the situation of the acid deposition, it is decreasing water quality. So actually, in these zones, for example, for the typical situation by the end of 1980s and 1990s, it was the decision just to have gas cover, because also with the pressure of the air pollution, it was tendency to decrease timberline. But on the opposite now, with the expected climate change, the timberline might be even increasing, and so it is still open debate what to do is impose upper elevations according to the situation with the air pollution. For example, here is comparison of 2 scenarios. A, to have in the whole catchment even age not use spruce forestance like in the 1980s, or scenario B with those 5 different zones and structured forestry respecting the partial dominant areas. For example, here is the position of sulfur, and it is reduced, of course. So thank you very much for your presentation, for your attention, and happy Christmas to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph, for your presentation. If there are any questions, also can be put in the comments part, or later on we can discuss it. I will now like to ask Professor Gerhard Schuler to join us and give his presentation. Professor, please take the floor.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me very good?
Yes, very good.
Okay, then I try to share my presentation. I hope you can see now what I want to present here.
Yes, it's
Okay, so I want to, firstly, I want to say thank you that you give me the opportunity to tell a little bit about climate change and forest hydrology. And of course, it has some big impacts on forest and water management. So my outline is I will show you what's forest hydrology. I will tell about land use management, about ecosystem services, climate change, and then coming to the points drinking water, processed water, and drought in the forests. And also, if you have too much water, about risk of mitigation, flood and flash floods, which are also generated in the headwater catchments. So forest hydrology, just to keep it in mind, deals with the water balance of forests and natural woodlands, in particular with precipitation in and outside of forests. So you can imagine rainfall, snow, mist, interception, throughfall, then evapotranspiration. Groundwater recharge is one very important point, the runoff behavior if you are looking for floods and flash floods, and this all in dependency on forest types and forest management measures. And we have the investigation of the effects of recent forest damage on the water balance has gained a special interest. So if you see here, just to keep in mind that we have this soil water content, soil water reserve is depending upon on one point on precipitation, so also on throughfall, and on the other point on evapotranspiration. And you can see here the consequence, what happens in summertime in the vegetation period. You have an increasing evapotranspiration and a decreasing soil water reserve in the soil. And if you are looking also to that, what is interesting now for water providing, groundwater, and you can also see, of course, groundwater recharge depends also on precipitation on one hand, how much precipitation do we have, and how big is the evapotranspiration. And you can also see that we have normally in our area only a groundwater recharge outside of the vegetation period. In the vegetation period, we have nearly no groundwater recharge because evapotranspiration is too much. So when we are talking about all this influences, impacts of forest, water, and so on, we have also to state that in the past land use changed considerably from waste woodland. If you see the columns on the left side with meandering rivers flowing and it extended in natural floodplains, and then people, of course, they influenced land use and they subjugated the land with agriculture, settlement areas, traffic infrastructure. So we have here, on one hand, close to nature management versus the exploitative management, and the people's activities in land use endanger nature, biodiversity, forests, water, climate, all big questions that we are discussing just in the moment, what happens with the changing land use. Water management is also more than water engineering. We heard a lot of building dams and so on, but water management is also adapted land use management. And because we have big parts of the land is a forested area, so it's also related to forest management. And we need also to respect the power of water. In the first presentation this morning, we saw already this protective forests in Austria, and we can see here the power of water here in Germany. It's a little bit similar like that's what we saw in Austria, but also in Southeast Europe, North Macedonia, in Albania, erosion and landslides also in Croatia. So we have a lot of impacts of water in the forests, and the consequences, if you are looking the land use in forested headwater catchment, here is the same forest land, and in here about 30 years later, forested land, and you can imagine that this will have also serious impacts on the water behavior in this in these areas. So forestry, agriculture, and measures in settlement areas and traffic infrastructure, as well as handicraft, trade, and industry, must adequately respect nature, so that people can continue to benefit from ecosystem services. And now we are coming to this, what are ecosystem services? We have human well-being is highly dependent on such ecosystem services, and just to remember that we have provisioning services, regulating services, cultural services, supporting services. So what we are talking is about, on one hand, provisioning services. There's also fresh water, of course, timber and so on, and also regulating services if you are looking to climate, but also water regulation, water purification, and we are also looking to supporting services if we are looking to nutrient cycling, soil formation, and so on. So forest, that's very important, is more than a producer of wood. The forest has an ecosystem, produces a variety of important services for mankind. It's more than only forest functions. So it's a real service which must be provided. As I told, we have this provisioning services, regulating services, supporting services, and cultural services. So when we have a cascade of this ecosystem services, so we have this ecosystem service, the ecosystem forest, and in this forest we want to provide services, and it depends on human well-being. And then we come back about the use. We need political decision making. What do we want to have? And then we need management strategy, how to get, how to come to this aim. And then we need also to have this management plans and implementation, not only for timber production, but also an implementation and a management plan to provide ecosystem services, to see which forest functions are there and what ecosystem service can we provide, and how can this ecosystem services used by mankind. So, but also, if we are talking about ecosystem services which should be provided, then we have also to talk about payments for ecosystem services, and we have this. We have an European cost action, cooperation on science and technology in Europe, and we are talking here about payments and markets for ecosystem services. Of course, we are also looking for service provision and who is interested in these ecosystem services. And we want to develop a European payment for ecosystem services, and we want to provide ecosystem service repository of case studies, what was already done in Europe, and how can we learn about these experiences for payments for ecosystem services. Payments may be by the states, the concerned states, or payments by the users. So it's also possible. And then we are coming to climate change. Climate change and forest hydrology is related very close, depending on how global greenhouse gas emissions develop. Climate models predict an increase in mean annual temperatures of 2 to 6 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. In the moment, we are more on the way to 6 degrees Celsius than to 2 degrees, but I hope it will change. So extreme weather events such as heat, drought, and torrential rain will continue to increase, and there will be more precipitation at least here in Germany and in the middle European countries in the winter months and less in the summer months. Maybe we are faced with more droughts everywhere in Europe. Less precipitation and rising temperatures and evapotranspiration, as well as extended periods of drought, put forest ecosystems under stress and also endangers the supply of drinking and processed water from forests to the population. Though it's not only that forests have an impact, also the provision of water. And that's the ambivalence of this. So we have forest and woodland should provide protective services for water resources. But on the other hand, the vitality of forests and woodlands themselves is affected also by climate change, by decreasing water availability. And in view of climate change projections, the water cycle of forests must be reassessed, and forest and water management together must be adapted to the tremendous risks which are still uncertain in their factual future extent. So if you are looking here to Germany, you see what will happen, what happened in the last 3 years, and maybe the last 3 years will show the future in the next 50 and 100 years, but still an extended future. So in Germany were characterized by significantly warmer summers with dry periods, and we had severe soil drought developed in some German regions. You can see everywhere where it's dark red. We had a big drought so winter precipitation has not been sufficient to compensate for the respective water deficits of the previous years, and rainfall events in the summer months increasingly turn out to be extreme events with water running off the surface rather than penetrating into the soil. So what was the consequence? We don't have enough water to fill up the planned available field capacity of the soils for the forest plants, for the trees. We don't have enough water for groundwater recharge in the last 3 years, and sometimes we have too much water for infiltration, cause flash floods, erosions, and then even landslides, because if it's raining in the summer, we have only torrential rainfalls and it cannot infiltrate into the soil. So now we are coming to a competition for water. Forests take the needed water from the upper unconfined aquifers in the soil. But in forest areas, we have also, adjacent to the forest areas, we have also agriculture. And also this agriculture needs, especially if it's not raining enough, they need also to take water for irrigation, their crops. And they take it from wells in the upper or middle confined aquifers, mostly in the forest, as you can see here in this picture. And these aquifers are also connected via hydraulic windows with the unconfined upper aquifers where forests are living from, and then they run dry. Thus, the tree suffers or even die due to the lack of water. And now we are coming to an ethic questions to take water for agriculture and let the forests die of thirst. So this is a big question, but it's still worse. Then because we have an alarming battle for groundwater. Forests as land use still ensures groundwater of high quality. Decreasing groundwater recharge and high nitrate pollution under intensively farmed areas is a reason that drinking water suppliers install a big number of wells in the forest areas, not in agricultural areas. But if too much groundwater is extracted, as you can see here in the map on the right side, with all the wells that we have in forested areas, in the slight green areas, if too much groundwater is extracted from deep wells, the upper aquifers also run dry via hydraulic windows. Firstly, the forest lack of water. Secondly, the agricultural lacks of water. And now we have a number of wells, and this number of wells is a question of existence, because you can see it here. If the trees lack water, how long will it take before there's no longer enough water for the people? So maybe we have some time, but not all the time is available that we need to have good solutions for it. Drought, stress, and forest trees. We have the reactions of forest trees. We always say, okay, pine trees are not very sensitive, but you can see on the picture, of course, we have a lot of reactions of the trees. Drought and heat lead to a reduced vitality of trees. The deteriorated trees are more susceptible to pests. At the same time, the higher temperature and the longer duration of the warm season favor the development of insects and also the migration of new pest populations into our area. For example, I will give you an example here for the part of Middle Europe. We have this heavily cleared older beech trees. And this year, in 2020, in consequence of the last 3 years, had drought stress symptoms in summer 2020. And due to the intensive thinning operations, either dense beech regeneration has established. And you can see this established beech generation is still green. So there is still a little bit hope, and we need also to adapt our forest management to reduce the stress for the big trees. So what's the evaporation of beech stands initially decreases with increased thinning, and then when thinning exceeds a tipping point, evaporation increases again because transpiration in the forest floor vegetation and also evaporation on the forest floor increase due to higher radiant energy and greater wind movement. So when water cannot be replenished from the soil into the root after the soil matrix potential has exceeded the critical value, we say it's about PF for 4.2, that's a matrix potential. The tension also in the xylem conducting vessels of the beech trees increases, and then we have emboli, and they interrupt the xylem flow into the beech leaves. That's also a forest hydrological problem. So we have also to look for silvicultural consequences from hydrological recognitions because beech trees are sensitive to drought stress. When thinning strategies are too strongly oriented towards increment, though we have to remember what's the good treatment of beech trees. Therefore, due to climate change, we need to look for close to nature silviculture in the dimensioning phase of these beech trees. And this must be oriented towards the stand dynamics of natural beech stands with a closed canopy. But that means also smaller individual crowns and less forced diameter increment, and also a loss of productivity of these forests. So we are faced also with ecosystem shifts explained by forest hydrology. So if in future midsummers a xeric stand climate occurs with significantly higher temperatures, previous beech sites will be increasingly dominated by oak. And we can see it now in Southeast Europe, what happens there. And we can look if there's a climate similar to that, what we expect in climate change in the next 50 or 100 years. And they suggest that we should shift now from this beech forests in Middle Europe to more oak, dominating oak forests. So it also a consequent learning from each other what will happen in other points. Let us change a little bit the topic and how to deal with too much water. It's also, if you have torrential rainfalls, we need to delay discharge because we need the water in the forest, not in the next rivers, and not don't need to produce floods and flash floods. from headwater catchments. So flash floods are very dangerous also everywhere. Flash floods of small rivers can cause considerably damages in settlement areas, and they have a very short advance warning time, and technical protection measures are mostly lacking or not sufficient for these flash floods, and that underlines to delay also this very fast runoff as much as possible. And you can see here example, what can we do with land use, with silviculture. If you have a forest, we have and if you have a clear cut, then runoff increases in clear cut areas in a very short peak and in a higher peak. So what would we say? Okay, no clear cuts is the first what we want to do. And also the next is don't drive with heavy machinery uncontrolled on forest soils, because you destroy the forest pore system in the pore system in the soils. That means water cannot infiltrate, and we have overflow surface runoff, and this will cause again in floodings. Some statements we need also to look forest hydrology. They say, okay, forest is very good because interception has a saturation capacity of about 10 millimeters, but the torrential rainfalls, they start with 40 millimeters. So interception is not that what can help very much. Water consumption is approximately 1 to 10 millimeters per day, and it empties the soil water reservoir so that new water can infiltrate into the soil. But evapotranspiration of grass cover has also 8 millimeters per day. But if the grass is matted, water cannot infiltrate, and we have again a surface runoff. So keep the forest close, that you don't have a forest grass cover. And then we have also to look what are the soil conditions, because that's very important. And land use history teaches that forests often remained on bad soils. Better soils were for the agriculture area. And then we have also a runoff from forest soils because the storage capacity is not enough, or we have stagnant soils with natural rapid runoff. And as driving in forest was rather restricted, forest soils have also a well-training pore system with a high infiltration rate. But if you have already heavy machineries, or if you have sort of reforestation of agricultural soil, it takes centuries to regenerate a destroyed pore system in the soils. And though you have also runoff from forest soils. If you are working in the forest, you have to look for decentralized retention measures, and they have only a chance to be efficient if you really look for all possibilities in a catchment that are achieved, beginning to the nearest places of runoff generation. You have to make a very good, you have to look in the forest, where is a flood generation, and then go to the point and try to stop this flood generation at the point. We have published already a lot of possible measures for water retention in the forest. And if you see in the micro scale, each additional flood precautionary measures makes the discharge curves diverge from their starting points to meet on the flood frequency curve at a higher flood return period. So it means if you have the normal discharge, you can see here the red curve, and then if you make, for example, some precautionary silvicultural measures, you meet the red curve on this point. If you have additionally silviculture and soil protection, you meet the red curve here, and then you can have also runoff reduction from forest roads. We have also published some possibilities how to do it. Then you have a meeting point here and this flood return period, so you have only floods in a longer period, so maybe flood generation all 30 or 40 or 50 years instead of all 10 years or 5 years. So what are the consequences? Principles of forest management in climate change should also be based on no-regret decisions with a broad risk diversification, considering climate resilient, vital and site-adapted mixed forests with native main and associated tree species, as well also as complementary tree species which are already adapted to expected climate development in neighboring growing areas, though we are looking also for the Carpats and also for the Balkan area for complementary tree species. We need a wide age range in the forest, and also a wide range of possible climate projections, because we don't know the real climate in 100 years, but we are working for the next 100 years. So we need also to look for dry climate change projections, also for wet climate change projections, and this depending on ecosystem services to be provided. So we are not looking only for timber production, we are also looking for other ecosystem services like groundwater recharge, and for this key ecosystem services, forest hydrology is a key element of silviculture in a changing climate. Here are some references if you are interested in it, and I thank you for your attention in my very fast excursion to forest hydrology. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. It was really fast, but with a lot of information, and I think it's very interesting presentation. So after this, I would like to thank the presenters for their involvement and ask participants to ask any questions or provide comments if they have on what we heard this morning. I'm seeing here in the chat bar that there is one question for Professor Schuler. It's from Slobodan Stjepic. It's asking, does ecosystem services means a harvesting forest, or that we need to harvest forest, if I understand it right?
Yeah, as you saw, we have different ecosystem services, and the original function of a production forest was timber production, and we said 50 years ago, if we make timber production, then we have some forest functions, and these forest functions are enough to protect water and so on. But the development of the last time showed that's not enough. Though that was because in the last 20 years, the theory of ecosystem services was developed, and then we need also to provide and really to work with forest ecosystem services. And for example, in Germany, we have it already in the Forest Act that we have this different ecosystem services that we have to consider, and they are timber production is not more in the foreground. It's just like water protection has the same value, and of course we need also to think about how is it, can we get payments? And we have some countries in this cost action who earn more money with water protection by the water users than with timber production. So forest administration has to think about this ecosystem services, but also we have to look for payments for ecosystem services.
Thank you for your answer, Professor. We now have one raised hand from Mr. Vasco Stoyov. Please.
Okay, I'm from Hydromet Service, Macedonia. Thank you, Professor Schuler, for a nice presentation. I totally agree about your presentation, and I can say that trees and forests could save us from climate variation in this very difficult time, and what we're expecting in the future, especially our region. Balkan region is very vulnerable for concerning droughts and floods as well. And if Germany has problem now concerning droughts, you can imagine what will happen for our countries now and in the future, what we can expect with this dry period what is in front of us. So I like to mention that forests and trees are very important concerning hydrology and concerning protecting us from droughts and floods. And we need really to work to do some more structure measures and non-structure measures in our forest to keep water upstream in the catchment. Actually, with keeping water in upper part of the catchment, we will preserve water for the future. We will fill reservoirs in the forest with more water, and also we can keep ourselves from floods and flash floods, because only this is the way how we can survive actually from floods and flash floods, and also with the problems of droughts. So in addition, I would like to ask Professor Schuler about what he think about measures in forest roads when actually forest company go in the field and do roads for their vehicles for getting more woods from forests. They just dig new roads and in some cases don't do some measures for protecting surface groundwater. Actually, this first water which is going under the soil, when they cut the soil for producing roads, actually they cut the road of the groundwater. So I'm interested in how they protect themselves with this type of problems, because if they cut forest companies these roads, actually they make water faster to come downstream and make problems. Mm-hmm. So, Professor, please try to explain this, how you're doing this to protect yourself.
Yeah, of course, we need forest roads as infrastructure that we can manage the forests. That's on the first point. But then we have also prepared expert system and to see how does forest roads impact a fast runoff? Because forest roads, you can imagine, forest roads are a line structure, and line structures are always very dangerous because they concentrate the water and they let the water very fast out of the forest. So we need to build forest roads, and we have some proposals how to build the forest roads and to redistribute the water from the forest roads to the adjacent forests, and not to let them be beside the forest road or run on the forest road to the valleys and so on. So we had just now, we finished a project with CNVP in Skopje, and they have also these ideas in Balkans GEM. It's a project funded by the German Environment Foundation. And we published already these possible measures for to get a better forest road system. And though it's very, we need to change a little bit our thinking in forest road building, also in water. And if we are building a forest road, then we need also to assess what happens to the water in this area where we are building the forest road. And then we should, the idea is not to have more runoff than the normal forests, the adjacent forest to the forest road. And I think we have some very good ideas, and I can recommend this CNVP in Skopje. They have the ideas, and they have already published also some of these ideas in some leaflets and explanations how to deal with it.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Professor Blinkov also wanted to add something on this. So, Professor, please, you can speak now.
Hi to everybody. Vasco, I was a part of this project that was supervised by Professor Schuler. I'll send you all documents with the explanations. Yes, you're right. Forest roads are a problem for runoff. It happens saturated overland flow. You're right, with a lot of sediments, sometimes big create gullies on the forest roads. One professor from Czech Republic, I don't know his name, he suggests, it was on one conference, he suggests creation pond on forest roads, small ponds after ending of the forest activities. It's okay from one point of view, but we in North Macedonia, but also in Albania, and in Greece, we have huge problem with forest fires, and our roads, forest roads, must be accessible. So we need to find any other solution, like ditching, drainage, covering of the forest roads, and all these recommendations were written in this document, Guide for Forest Planning. I will send you. I will send you. But I would like to ask you what you can say about evapotranspiration processes. Professor Schuler explained what's happened during the summer period, and in case of variable precipitation, what's happened with the evapotranspiration. Do you remember this slide? Because we discussed about this related to PRESPA.
You ask me about
Yes, I'm asking you.
It is understandable that after growing temperature, evapotranspiration is going up normally. This is process. We see everywhere that evapotranspiration is going very fast. Like as you can see on our data from actually temperature data, we saw that all stations are showing increasing of temperature, and on the stations where we analyze evaporation, we saw also that evaporation is going up. So evapotranspiration is the same. So increasing of evapotranspiration with losing of water in addition. And we could not expect that evapotranspiration will be lower when we have increasing of temperature. And of course, we saw in the last 3 years also some decreasing of precipitation. But if we look in a longer period, we can see that precipitation is pretty much the same, no big tendency. But evapotranspiration definitely is increasing. So because of that reason, we need to do more and more structural and non-structural measures in our forests to protect our forest from lack of water, and not only protect our forest, but protect ourselves. And this, what you mentioned that you will send me, it's okay, but it's not important to have this documentation and information. Forest company need to have this and to improve it, their roads with this protection of water, not to allow water to go downstream very fast and make problems with floods.
I can underline what you said. It's very important, even if precipitation is the same and remains the same, evapotranspiration is going up, and then you will have a lack of water. We also see here in our area that if we have, you said structuring forests, that's very important, because and you have to consider that there are some tipping points. If you make too much structure in forests, then you have again evapotranspiration from the vegetation on the forest floor and more evaporation on the forest floor. So keep your forest closed, and this is a little bit better than to make too much structure. But you have also to think about forest trees have different strategies to react on such on such drought situations, on such drought stress. So it's a difference. If you have oak trees, they have another strategy, like the beech trees. They have another strategies like the pine trees. So you need to understand which strategy is the best for this future or for this period that we get a higher evapotranspiration and less water availability in the forest soils. That's very important to know more about this behavior of the trees. Then you can adapt your forest management strategy to this behavior.
Thank you, Professor, for this explanation. If there is nothing on this topic, then there was some questions also for Mr. Kreček and Mr. Leiner. Some of them were answered in the comments, but I see one question from Kosovo here regarding the working group on forest and water. Who can be part of that group is the question. Should it be expert institutions? Maybe Mr. Kreček can answer this. And again, after that, Professor Blinkov was willing to ask some questions to Mr. Kreček and Mr. Leiner. So in that order, please.
Okay, may I talk about the working group? So the question was, who can participate in the working group on forest and water, is it right?
Yes.
So I think it is open. Of course, it's the best way to contact our secretary, Ms. Yuka Makino, because it depends on the country. When the country is already member of the working party on the management of mountain watersheds. So when the country is official member, it is possible actually for everyone who is interested to join activities of the working group. But the best way is to contact Ms. Yuka Makino.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Professor Blinkov, now you can speak
Okay.
for us.
Thank you, Vojislav. Thank you to all three presenters for very good information. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anybody from Department of Forest Planning from National Forest. However, here is Milorad Andrijevski from National Forest from branch office in Gostivar to hear some new approach and methods. Mr. Leiner, Hallstatt, I was 7 years ago on any field trip in Hallstatt. I was shocked. Such a lot of active measures to protect, even on the access road to Hallstatt, even in the Hallstatt. We were shocked. So what's happened? Why? And you didn't mention that this is a very important city or big village for the Austria, and this is UNESCO site. This is UNESCO site. There were also everything, double wire rings, fence for rock falls, for everything, for avalanche control, active measures, then galleries on the roads. But only 1 week after our visit, Hallstatt was flooded. It means that sometimes it was, I don't know, 7 years ago. I mean, 6, 7, 8 years ago. In case of extreme conditions, not in case of the flood water. With all these measures, were definitely were attend was a lot of sediments, especially in the case of rock falls and everything that can achieve the torrent bed. But however, we cannot stop the water in the case of extreme conditions. Am I right, Mr. Leiner?
Yes, Professor, that's absolutely right. You know, and you mentioned it, Hallstatt is a very small village with not many people there, but it is very important for tourism. And so very many international guests visit Hallstatt and the villages around Hallstatt. And yes, all the measures are introduced and built to lower the risk. but of course just to a special point. So if there are over this point, if there are too heavy precipitation or too heavy storms or floods, of course there will be a rest risk. So yeah, it's very hard to implement the right measures. But I think all those measures in Hallstatt and near around are very effective to lower the risk. But of course, over that risk, it is hard to implement measures over that risk. And this is always how to say, always you always have to remember all these measures are very expensive, and so you just can't provide a protection for a special amount of money. So you have to depend which measures are needed and which measures are maybe too big or not usable. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Leiner. And for other colleagues who didn't know that in Austria from the 90s they work on defining sorry risk zones. They provide they create a red zone, yellow zone, and green zone around all settlements. This is a process risks of torrents, of avalanches, landslides, etc. Multi-hazard risk zoning. This is a process we are in. We started with this process, but only for flood zoning, and later, I do hope in the near future we will work on this hazard zoning like in Austria. And always people from Austria, Switzerland suggest us deviation, but in this case, in Hallstatt, there are a lot of mountains and there is no chance for deviations. I mean, okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I mean, the hazard zoning is the most important thing to plan the measures in the future. But of course, we implement those. I think we are finished now in all villages with natural hazards that we implemented those hazard zone planning. But of course, there are old buildings and old infrastructures, decades old, and that could be a reason that we need technical measures to protect those buildings or those infrastructure who are older than the hazard zone planning.
Thank you, Mr. Lai. I mean that PhD of Marcus was about something how to protect these old buildings, to empowering construction, etc. Doesn't matter. Okay. I would like to ask Professor Kreček. Professor Kreček, I don't know the dimension of the reservoirs, volume of the reservoirs, area of the watershed. Have you already done shore zone functionality index for these lakes? Because riparian, you mentioned that riparian zone is very important.
Okay, so the watershed area is some 26 square kilometers for one and about 40 square kilometers for the other one. And there are some adjacent area of water allocation to those. And what kind of index you were interested? I didn't catch it.
Shore zone functionality index created by Professor Maurizio Silgardi. It's included in Water Framework Directive as a tool for evaluate the influence of shore zone on the lakes, but also to protection from any pollution, etc. Also, there is an index of fluvial functionality.
Or
It's
we didn't.
recognized. It's recognized by Water Framework Directive now.
Okay, but we didn't include those indexes to our analysis.
Okay. Maybe in other lakes, I don't know. I read in other lakes in Czech Republic, it's done. It was done, but because of that, I ask you. It's very simple. You can check it.
Okay, yes, but I don't think that it is relevant for the study we just provided.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Biko, for your questions and for the provided comments. There is also some comment from Mr. Sinani from Kosovo, but to be honest, I cannot understand it. If it's possible to translate it, and maybe we can come back to it later. If there are any other comments or questions, because this session we are on the end of it. If someone has something to ask or comment, we still can use some more minutes. If not, then we can go for a break if there is no comments or questions.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Fabiola Terzion. I'm representing NGO Finch from Kosovo. I would like to ask or a suggestion, I don't know. So in Balkans, but in Balkan region also, I'm talking about Kosovo. We have already facing difficulties in the construction of small and large hydropower plants. So near and inside the national park. So the impact, it's not only in the river flow, but also in pastures, forest ecosystem. So not to mention wildlife. It's any successful example or good practice that we can you can provide to us to show how they have reached goals not to make so these problems in the ecosystem service and also in the degradation of national parks, because as we know, Kosovo is going to remark the protected area and the Natura 2000 so near, and this is a really good if you have any really good examples, it will be very good to know. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment on this? Anyone want to answer? Maybe Mr. Cveček, if he has some experience in this.
Okay, may I answer this? So for our area, actually, the region I mentioned, it is claimed as nature protected area, not national park, but it is the next category, nature protected area, and also headwater protected area. It means just to protect water resources. And in the guidelines, in general guidelines for those areas, we have a special restriction of beer cut, and also timber skidding technology should be preferred skidding by horses, traditional skidding, or using helicopters and so on, cableways. But with the calamity of the acidification and large dieback, so the practical situation was that it was not respected. It was a special permission from the government to do the clear cut, actually. But the guidelines, I think, are effective to protect the soil erosion in the normal conditions, just to control especially the technology of forest harvest. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your answer. If there are no other answers or questions, I think we can take a short break of 10 minutes and then come back with the GIS part. Okay. See you then in 10 minutes. Are we all back here? I think we can start with the next session, and I will give the floor to Professor Ivan Minchev to start with his presentation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ivan Minchev. I come from the University of St. Cyril and Methodius, from the Forestry faculty. Now it's Faculty for Forest Sciences, Landscape Architecture and Eco Engineering, HANSEM. This will be sort of interactive session, and we are going to see some stuff how could be technically done. So the presentation is called GIS Techniques Forest Planning with Relations to Water Regulation, Innovative Practices and Tools. So the first part will be about mostly forest monitoring, forest cover change, and how this can be implemented in a sense of water regulation services. At the beginning, we're going to see 3 databases which are already available for everybody to use. So we are going now with a simple approach in which everybody who has computer and internet can access data about forests, generally in Europe, but also all over the world. For this, you don't need special extra knowledge for GIS. For the next part, yes, but let's see how it is going. So first, we're going to see the Global Forest Change database produced at University of Maryland. So later you will have the link in this presentation so you can see it. This is the site. So it's a global database of forest change. Here on the site, you can see the years. It's a bit, let me see, because it's covered by the people who are here. So here we so this database is generally it has a wider time frame. So as you can see on the picture here on the right, there are several change. So forest cover gain, loss, and change layers. So for example, let's choose one and see what's happening. For example, we choose this one, forest land cover loss 2019. So this is what has been a forest in 2000, and in 2019 is not. And we're going to choose the transparent one so we can see where we are and what. So for example, I will zoom here, this part. So you can see here a lot of red spots. For example, let's see this part here. So I'm always saying that who is using this, this is a tool for detecting losses of forest. But everybody should be very careful when using this kind of databases. They are usually produced automatically. They are checked, but not a lot. For example, here it's and we also don't know what's the source of the loss. This is a part of Albania. A lot of red spots, as you see here. I will zoom in here. For example, this is Bulčiza. a lot of red spots down. And in this period of 20 years, we have loss of forest here. So this is at least a good indicator that there was a change here in the forest cover. Now I will show you another database which has changes in forest cover also, but in a short period. So I'm going to use the Copernicus site now, Land Copernicus EU, Pan-European High Resolution Layers, Forest Cover Density, Change Maps. So there are two periods at the moment. Here what we are seeing is the 2012 to 2015, so 3 years of change. And they have also another database, which is 2015-2018. At the moment, we can see two periods. Let's check the same place, what we were looking at the moment. So that was the one. So you see Fuchsia Bulchiza, here again Fuchsia Bulchiza. They're not similar. They're not the same actually, but there is a lot of forest loss. And as I remember from the past years, I think that these were a lot of forest fires in Albania in that period, and that was the reason why these things are here. So I can go also on Google. Here on Google, the same place, similar. Let's check what's happening. This is the 2020. You can observe this part here, the mountain south of Fuchsia Bulchiza. And let's go back. For example, 2012. Let's see again here, 13, 14, 15. You see now, 2016. You can watch here change in the greenness of the area. So this area, I guess it was burned, and after some years, it recovered. It's again green. So as you can see, with very simple tools, we checked the situation. But I'm always saying, be very skeptic about the data. Okay, when you're doing analysis on a country level, on a big scale level, then it's not a problem. We can put some general notions. How is the situation? But when we do in detail, when we look at the parts, we have to check the things ourselves and to see how are these things real or not, or we have to go to the field and check it on the field. That's usually the most important part and most reliable part. So now I'm going back to the presentation. This was the introductory part about the presentation. Now we are going. I was doing the same analysis with the same tools you have seen here. This is a part of North Macedonia. So it's this is the beginning of the Vardar River. This is Polog Valley. Here you can see this is just like overview of the area. This is the erosion map. You can see this is Shara Mountain on the northwestern part, and you can see there are a lot of erosive processes here. The colors red, brown are very common here. So this part is very steep and very prone to erosion. again, I will show you here on the right side. You can see this is a database of historical floods and flash floods. So as what you can see, the importance why this area is very prone to erosion processes. And the next part, you will see how why the forest cover is important for monitoring of forest cover is important. For example, this is a small catchment of this map here, and this is the situation at the moment, and this is a model situation how it will be if the forest is removed. So you see big differences. The dark green part is very low amount of annually produced sediment, and the right side it's increasing double. You see the high values are 3,700, and here there's 6,000. Now let's see the catchment. So this is part of the catchment. You will see that the same situation as before, but this is just extracts in the presentation. So you see Gostivar city, south of Gostivar, you see we have some activities there. This is the zoomed part of this area. So you see the orange part. As a reference, you see Lakavica on the right here, and this part here in the middle. So this is the change, the loss of forest from 20 years. Let's check now the other databases. This is Google Earth 2002. So you see it's a good situation. We have forest. 2009 are already activities done here. A lot of these parts are the forest is removed. And on the end, 2019, we see some of the parts which were cut before 2009. They're also they are not recovered. So some parts are recovered, but mostly are not. So this is a very nice tool for monitoring of the situation with the forests. The same with the tree cover change mask. So we are using now the same area, different data set. So this is on the left up, you see the 20-year change, and down you have the Copernicus. So you see the difference. This is the 3-year change, 2012, 2015. And these are in the 3 years there, this area is evidently there were some forestry activities there. Here we can see the whole, now the Shara area we're looking at. So these are how this was done. We took the tree cover from tree cover change from Copernicus, and we did manually the change. What was a change over 70% of forest cover, if it was the change more than 70%, then we said that's an actual change. And we set up the database, and later we overlapped it with Google Earth images and aerial images, what was available, and it was checked whether those this data is correct or not. So a lot of polygons were removed, and on the end, this was left. And next, the polygons were taken from the public enterprise to see what did they cut as planned cuts in this management unit. And you see here the yellow striped polygons are the cuts done by the public enterprise, and the reds are the not uncounted ones. So I guess the illegal cuts are here, and it's a very big area which it's under pressure from the villages. So here another one, the same. you see a lot more illegal cuts than the regular cuts. And down also another thing, so more than double, and in some catchments more than 5-6 times than the regular cuts are the legal cuts, which were recognized. And also I can mention this was done from Google Earth imagery, so you cannot see if somebody took out few trees from and didn't disturb the cover. So these were clear-cutted areas which can be observed from the satellite. So I guess there was also more things that we were not able to see from above. And this is the table. Why this was important? Because we wanted to see what's the pressure on the forest resources, in a sense, how do they protect the soil from erosion, and how to affect the water resources. So this was generally done for flooding of this area, and you can see from the table the red values, 7 or 8% annually from the forests is cut in some catchments. So this is a huge area. In very short time, this will be depleted, and no forest will be there, quality forest to protect. So and this is very much connected with the flooding in the areas. There were a lot of flash floods in the past years, and also some people died, and it's a huge problem. The illegal cuts are a huge problem for forest management and protective functions of the forests. So this is like a small conclusion from this part here. That was one example. We're going now with a different example. Forest management practices in the vicinity of water reservoirs. This was part of my PhD. So case study Skalimansi Reservoir, it's in the eastern part of the country. As you can see, big catchment area. Down we have a reservoir, water reservoir. Generally, the water reservoirs, their role and destiny is to be filled up with sediment eventually. And we as a foresters, we need to put more protective forests to protect the reservoirs from filling up, and to use it more. This water is used for irrigation, and hydropower energy. So and the question also here was, how is the soil erosion affecting the end recipient, the reservoir? So sometimes we don't care if it's in the upper part of the catchment there is erosion, but if the sediment doesn't come if the sediment doesn't enter the reservoir, then it's not a problem. If it lifts, it's deposited somewhere in the catchment. But if it comes to the reservoir, then it's a problem, because the reservoir is filling up the useful storage. So firstly, it was done to assess the situation with the sediment at the moment. This was done with bathymetric analysis. So you see the boat, echosounder. This is fishing echosounder, which was used. You can see on the right there's a picture how it is, the technology of the echosounder. So it's a sonar using the sound waves, which is producing and receiving and measuring the depth of the reservoir. And with this, we did this. You see the profiles where these were measured, and also these profiles were used in the past to measure the sediment in the reservoir, and they were compared later. You see on this slide These are the measurements from the past years. From 69, it was closed the dam, and now in 2013, the last measurement was done then. You can see the graph. The trend is decreasing with the sediment deposition. If until the 1980s, the annual sedimentation was 400 something cubic meters per year, 400,000. Now it's around 200,000 and less in the past years. And this is accounted for mostly. Our forests are getting better in some parts because there are lack of people. People are moving, and in the villages, and also there's no cattle and livestock, so the pressure on the ecosystems is lower. Where we have people, like the other part with what we see in the western parts, there we have high pressure on forest resources. Here, the first part was monitoring of sediment. This part is modeling of transport and sediment. So you can see here the main equations. Use erosion potential method from Gavrilovic. And there is one parameter which is important here, the cover, the forest cover, it's XA. So this is generally what we are focusing on. So this is a scenario, actually 5 scenarios, to determine how clear cuts affect the sedimentation and sediment transport to the reservoir. So you see the red circle down, the red polygon is this one zoomed. You see two polygons are on the immediate bank of the catchment, and the others have some transport distance, some bigger, some lower. The blue areas is the plant cuts where the clear cuts will be done. And from this picture, this table, you can see these are the final results of the model. So the first one is length is 1 kilometer. Transport distance. The other one is 200 meters. Next 6 kilometers, 11 kilometers, and 15 kilometers. So the first, which were on the immediate bank, they are very close, and you see how much of the area was removed. So the XA parameter was 0.16, after is 0.26. So from 0.13 is 0.68, large difference, and the other ones not very big difference of the XA parameter because a small area is cut from this catchment. Down you see the G is the sediment transport. So you see the difference. So the first one, it's doubling the transport. The other one, the second one, because it's a large area which we are cutting, it's 9 times more than the normal situation. So this tells us that it's very it's a big problem if we do clear cuts on the bank of the reservoir. Almost all of the sediment will go to the reservoir, and then so these forests which are on the banks of the reservoir should be kept as that, and the cut should be with low intensity. And the other ones you see with the longer transport distance, the numbers are also increasing with the cuts, but not a huge difference as the ones before. So in this study was done several analyses. I will not show everything, just the general notion. So you see this is the map of the sediment transport of the reservoir, of the whole catchment. You see how are the transport, the red zone around the reservoir. And from this study, it was concluded that from the first zone here, the immediate zone of the reservoir, because the distance is very short, almost all of the sediment is going to the reservoir directly. And the second part, because here we have a big valley, it's a morphological enlargement. Most of the sediment is deposited here. So almost 70% of the sediment which is produced here, it's deposited before in this part here. So we say this second zone is a lower risk zone. And final map is when in the first zone, every category which we had here, we increased it by 1. And the other ones, we left it as it is. And also, the recommendation is to put a buffer zone around the reservoir, at least a 100-meter zone, to give special attention to the forests which are surrounded the reservoir, in order to protect it from siltation, the reservoir. This is the second part. This was done as a project with CMVP, with also Professor Blinkov, Professor Schule. I'm going to talk about the technical aspects of the decision tree integration in GIS for estimation of runoff types. So the project was mainly for Albania and North Macedonia. There were 2 sites which were analyzed, 2 study areas. The existing database, as you see the list here, what was consisted of. But on the end, the important stuff for this model was soil map, geology map, and the road network. Here, first, here in the both countries, and generally in the Balkans, the problem is a problem with data acquisition. So some are readily available, but some are difficult to find and to obtain. For example, this is the soil map. North Macedonia, we have, you see here, we have the link, Max Soil, Wukim Maka. So it's a online WebGIS soil map system. So you can download the soil map from the whole country. So it was done with extensive analysis and field trips during the past years, many years. On the right side, you have the soil map of Albania. So also it's an input for the model. Next, you'll have geology map. These are not digital here in North Macedonia. So this part is just scanned, so it has to be processed later and digitized for the purposes of the study. Albania, you see, it's a digital map, but also not readily available for download, but somebody has to provide it. We were using forest management map to see the existing practices in the area, and the road infrastructure was also extracted from these management maps. And some scenarios were done, how if the current forest practices are implemented, what will be the impact on water and soil protection. Also, another input was the erosion map. So the erosion map is to pinpoint also some problematic areas. So erosion map for Macedonia is done at the moment. We did some preliminary modeling the past year and a half, and it was done. The previous, the older one was from 1990s. And on the right side, you have a part of Albania. This is the Ulza Reservoir catchment. We did the erosion mapping a few years ago, also with CMVP. There was a project also, we did the bathymetric analysis of the Ulza Reservoir. And the sediment was used also to determine the soundness of the erosion model, if it's correct or not, to calibrate it later or to use it as it is. And from these two maps, some critical areas were extracted for the study areas. This is existing roads. How it was done. Some of the roads are evident in the forest plans, but in most of the cases, also some other roads are used which are not there. So my policy in this project was to digitize everything and later to assess the impact of runoff on all of the roads to see how is the situation, where we have problems and so on. So you see that the two areas, one is Albania around the Uza Lake, the other one is north from Skopje. The study area is Strešovska River and Stračinska. So these two small catchments. You see the forest roads. These were digitized from Google Maps. And on here on the right side, you have the slope. Slope is very important. Not just the soil and geology, as I mentioned, but also what the runoff depends on the slope. Here is the decision tree that we were talking about at the beginning. How is the decision tree functioning? So generally taking soil geology, so permeability of soil and geology, and on the down part you have the slope of the area. So we are beginning at the top, soils with impermeable layer, hydraulic conductivity, and without coarse voids and cracks. It says no or yes. So it's this is the decision tree with short answers with yes and no. We go down to the two parts. So generally in Macedonia, almost all of the forest soils are permeable. So usually Cambe soils and similar soils are permeable. So we're going to watch first this part. So we said no. Drainage hydraulic conductivity in the upper soil moderately rapid, above 5 centimeters, and yes or no. So here as a help, you see there the types of soil. Actually, this is the soil texture of the soils. So if it's yes, if it's a more sandy soil like the Cambe soil, we go here. It's asking, is the bedrock permeable? So is the geology permeable or not? Most of the geology was not permeable, so we go no. And this is the first runoff, deep subsurface flow. If it's yes, then it's deep percolation, the second type of runoff. The other part, if we have a more clay soil, so also asking here if there are rocks on the surface of the area. There are some parts that this was the case with the Albanian part, where we had some outcrop rocks on the surface. This is sometimes even the case with limestones, where you have rocks on the surface. And if we have rocks, yes. If it's porous, Yes, we have Hortonian overland flow 2 and Hortonian 1. On the other part, if the bedrock is permeable, so if there's no rocks and the bedrock permeable, we go on this part, and here we include also the slope. You see the both tables are similar. So there are broad classes, 2 degrees, 2 to 20 degrees, 20 to 40 degrees, and so on. So from here you have different types of runoffs: soft 3, soft 2, Hortonian overland flow, Hortonian overland flow 1. The other part is if the soil is not permeable, and we can go from this part here. We go further. This is the case study for the two case studies with the geology first, to see what's happening with the geology. So here all of the geology in Albania was porous, so we were taking one class only. Here this part you see several geological types, some porous, some not. This is in GIS now reclassified geology types. Actually, these are soil types, sorry. So these are the soil types: erotic vertisol, mollicambisol, rock outcrops, so on. The only type which was not permeable were the erotic vertisols, this brown color, and the other one, everything was permeable except this blue color here, humic calcareic regosol. So we go down, substrate permeability. You see here the combinations of the substrate permeability: impermeable soil, permeable geology, permeable soil, impermeable geology, permeable soil, and geology. So the two layers of soil and geology are unioned one to the other, and according to the classes, they're assigned values for the permeability of the soil and geology, and on the end combined in one layer to see the final map here. The same with the Albanian part. We have here two classes, impermeable and permeable. We go next. This is after we go to the decision tree. These are the final maps represented here. So for example, we can take one area, for example, this blue area. If you see here, the brown area here is impermeable soil and permeable geology. Let's see what's happening with this. So as I said before, it's this part is sandy loamy sand. So this is the permeable soil, and impermeable bedrock is DSSF, so deep subsurface flow. You see here the blue one is deep subsurface flow. So it's the same with the other classes are created like this, and on the end you see also red spots. These red spots are taken from the erosion map, the highest classes of erosion. So first and second category of erosion are taken here and used as a risk areas, hotspots for runoff. And these maps now can be taken as an input with planning of forest cuts. So when we have deep subsurface flow, like in this case, then it's not a problem. It's not a problem because the water is going to the it's going to the soil and the geology, and it's not flowing on the surface. On the other hand, when we have here Hortonian overland flow, the water is not taken by the soil or the geological surface, and it's flowing on the surface. So here we have to do more conservative forest cuts in this part than in this blue other part, which is with good permeability. Next, we go to the expert system for forest road assessment. Here, it's similar as before. Here, but in this case, we're working on line features, so the roads. This before was done on the whole area, so the runoff was considered on the whole area, and here it's considered on the surface of the forest roads. Generally speaking, this decision tree was made in Germany for the northern parts of Europe. And there, the forest roads are very different because they have a bigger percentage of paved roads, or more than half or more they are paved roads here. And if they are not paved, also they are managed good. They put some protective measures around the road network to protect it from excess of water. Here in North Macedonia, Albania, and generally the Balkan parts, it's different. The situation is very different. The forest roads are managed and created by the forest public enterprise, and most of them are done without real technical plans, basic plans so they don't have any protection measures, and usually the water on the road is flowing on the road, and it's doing a lot of damage on the road. So you can see here now the decision tree. So first is asking if the forest road surface is paved, yes or no. So if it's yes, then we have soil lime pavement grave base or bituminous or concrete coating. So this on the Balkans is, you can find it in the lower parts or where you have some connecting parts. This is not done by the forest enterprises, but it's already there, and it's in very few cases we have it. So this part we can forget almost. So the other part is when we don't have a paved road. It says runoff in the adjacent forest, so we have a good slope of the road. Then the water, it will not stay on the road, but it will flow into the adjacent forest. And some of the parts we can find this, but intentionally done. Very rarely this is happening. Usually the roads are horizontal. They are not with the slope on the sides. If it's yes, okay, no in our case, humus layers or branch wood armiration, vegetation cover 100%. So this is if we put on top of the road some protection from the roads, and it's yes or no. Usually it's no. The left part, canopy cover over 75% of coniferous forest. Here in this part, coniferous forests are rare, and usually very rarely they cover the road, so they can protect it. Usually no. And we go to this left part when we consider the slope of the roads. So you see, if it's lower than 30% is subsurface is surface overland flow, and the other two are Hortonian overland flow. So now we can see the analysis. Here on the map in Albania, The red part here, that's the paved road. Also in Macedonia, these lower parts in the village are paved roads. So they immediately go in this part here. If they are paved, then it's Cortonian Overland Flow 1. So it's here. And the other one, because they are dirt roads, we have to consider the slope of the roads. And you can see the situation in both situations. Forest roads are usually steep. They're more than 10%. And you see the situation, especially in Macedonia, on the right part, most of the roads are red color. So all of the road network is in a critical state, and it can be a source of sediment and runoff processes. Now we are going to the part of doing some scenarios with the types of cuts. The type of cuts were done in a sense of removing forest cover, percentages of removing cover. So you see here in this table how much is the percentage of surface runoff with selective cut. That's the most in percentages, the lowest amount of removed wood. Shelter wood cut is 25%, and here in the other part is 43%. So very big difference from different kind of cuts. Here is the situation of the scenarios. So this is the same catchment for Macedonia. The black polygons are the ones which were planned for cutting. So these were assigned as, some were clear cuts, some were selective cuts. So we did a scenario if we do different kind of cuts. For example, here in this part with no activities, if there's forest, usually it's 5th category of erosion, so almost no erosion present there. Selective cut, so if it removes some of the forest, it is going 1 category down, so it's 4th category. It's also not problematic. Next we go shelter wood. So you see the polygons now are yellow, so 3rd category of erosion. And in the clear cut, you see it's 2nd or 1st category. So when we remove the forest cover, of course, this is the most problematic because we don't have any forest cover. And just to mention, these are scenarios done for the present year. So if we have a huge rainfall in this year, we are not unlucky, then we'll have a big problem there. So on steep terrains like this, we should consider not so evasive cuts. So you can see the difference for yourself. So also some forestry engineers will argue that, okay, this area will be clear cutted, but it will recover in few years. Yes, that's the truth. But in this period where when it is cut, then if we have a huge rainfall, then we'll have problems. And I have seen also some examples, some similar examples when some clear cuts were done in the higher parts of the catchment. Some of the forests were not even recovered after some times, as you see on the first slides for the Gostivar area. After some 20 years, there are also some bare lands. So we have to be extra careful when planning because it's very different if you cut on a very low slope and on high slope. So that part was from me. Now you can see here some video tutorials. We have a big database created with YouTube tutorials. The things you saw now for the scenarios done for Albania and North Macedonia, the GIS part, you can try it yourself on these video tutorials. The first one and down you see basic and case study. So the second one is a video tutorial from this area, and here on Albanian subtitles and in English language. This is in Macedonian language up, and here you also you have basic tutorials about using QGIS with data from concerning forests and water, some modeling done inside, doing vector creation, using rasters, and some databases. Also, if we speak about these video tutorials were done for the project which I mentioned. Also, we did some capacity building for the institutions involved for the Macedonian part and the Albanian part. So I also can say that the capacity building is a very important part for forest management and water management, and should be done more frequently. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ivan, for your presentation. I hope it was interesting for the participants and they will get let's say, this time to hear interesting things, and they were focused on the presentation, which was almost 1 hour. So if there are any questions or comments regarding this presentation and what was presented here, or maybe some questions for Professor Minchev related to the GIS techniques and how they are used, the floor is open. After that, we can go also to the discussion in general on policy and management recommendations for forest and water management in the Green River Basin. Yes, Mr. Kreček, please.
Oh yes, my question to Professor Minchev. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. And on one side, you mentioned surface runoff related to clear cut and shelter wood cut, some percentage. So my question is, what do you mean surface runoff? And in forest site, it is very difficult to observe it because you have forest data, and now it is question, what do you consider, what is surface runoff? And the technique of correction is very, very complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, this we didn't do any analysis on this. This was taken from literature. The table you saw on the end, we just were using as an input, just for practitioners to see the differences between, but we didn't do actual measurements on the field. So these were just taken data from literature.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with a question or comment related to the presentation provided by Professor Minchev. If there is not, maybe we can go on the last session and discuss about what we heard these 2 days and policy and management recommendations for future for this region. Anyone willing to talk on this topic also? Maybe Professor Blinko from the experiences they have, or maybe Mr. Kreček or Mr. Leiner, if it's here, with their view of the situation, how is in Europe and what these EU accession countries need to do related to that. If someone is willing to talk, the floor is open.
Vojislav, may I?
Yes, please.
Okay. We select for this project, we select 2 small catchments, Treševska and Vinička Reka. Why? Because in 2016, these 2 catchments having an area in total 22 square kilometers caused huge floods. Flooding in the northeast part of Skopje, and 22 people died in this flood. We remember from Macedonia what's happened this, and a lot of people accuse foresters. Everywhere in the media was foresters, they cut the forest, although these 4 compartments were planned for cut. They were not cut in the moment of the catastrophe. And it was very difficult to explain to the people that in case of this catastrophe, when it happened, a rain bomb over the mountain, an enormous quantity of water flow downstream and cause flooding, nothing can stop. We discussed with Professor Schule about this, that not more than 10 or 50% in case of this type of floods, when precipitation were over 100 millimeters on steep slopes, can be retained, not more than 10. But we said how to retain in the case, because this fluid, it was mud flow. In the upper part happened debris flow with a lot of sediments, but in the downstream part was mud flow up to the ring road around Skopje. And our idea was to explain to our colleagues from Forest Management Unit, from Forest Enterprise National Forest, what any possible what-if scenario, what's happened with the erosion processes and with quantity of sediments, because up to the ring road, maybe 400,000 cubic meter sediments were deposited in this area, and nobody knows downstream from the ring road in the agriculture area, surrounding agriculture area, and people from our colleagues accept this, and they prepared any annex to the forest management plan, because we know that they must do anything according to the plan. It was our idea for why we did this sub scenario in the end of this project. Ivan Minchev present this, although the main name of the project was something, but we add this erosion simulation. That's it. And because of that, we select some data from various scientific researches. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Anyone else willing to comment something or give a recommendation? As you heard these 2 days,
Vojislav, please.
Yes.
My name is Arian Meroli.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Meroli, you are free to speak.
Unë jam përfaqësues i një NGO-je, Cross Border Union for Flora, Fauna and Biodiversity. Kam pasur fatin të jem si thua një nga ata iniciuesit e këtij projekti në vitin 2005. Më vjen shumë mirë që projekti ka ecur dhe sot kemi disa outpute të tij. Unë desha të theksoj dy gjëra, duke qenë se objekti i këtij trajnimi është si thua edhe menaxhimi i regjimit të ujit në liçenin e Ohrit dhe watershedin e lumit të Drinit. Prej vitit 2005 dhe në 2020 unë kam qenë pjesë e ekipeve që kanë hartuar disa projekte, disa dokumenta strategjik për menaxhimin e qëndrueshëm të këtij rajoni. Flasim gjithmonë për pellgun e mbledhjes të liçenit të Ohrit dhe të Presvës. Kështu në vitin 2012, nuk e di a dëgjohemi.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. Ne kemi përgatitur dosjen për në UNESCO dhe rajoni i Ohrit dhe i Presvës është shpallur Transboundary Biosphere Reserve. Po ashtu të njëjtën gjë kemi bërë në vitin 2018 dhe po këtë rajon e kemi shpallur si trashëgimi natyrore botërore. Në këtë kuadër është përgatitur dhe një plan menaxhimi për menaxhimin e këtij territori që tashmë së bashku me pjesën maqedonse quhet trashëgimi natyror kulturor botëror. Ajo që duhet të theksoj është një fakt që prej vitit 2015, kur unë kam hartuar, kam qenë pjesë e këtyre dokumentave që janë hartuar, ka pasur një mungesë ose një mos respektim të dy elementeve që janë shumë të domosdoshëm për të pasur këtë status liçeni i Ohrit, që është respektimi i minimumit kritik, minimal dhe maksimal të kuotës së liçenit të Ohrit. Mbi bazën e dokumentave që unë kam parë tek ndërmarrja që merret me menaxhimin e digës së lumit të Drinit, kam vënë re disa gjëra që nuk janë të përcaktuara në mënyrë taksative ruajtja e këtyre kuotave dhe faktikisht prej vitit 2015 deri në vitin 2020 aktualisht gati 19 muaj kuotat e nivelit të liçenit të Ohrit kanë qenë nën minimumin kritik, e cila ka pasojë dhe impakt negativ mbi florën dhe faunën e këtij liçeni. Në muajin tetor, Global Water Partnership Mediterranean hartoi planin e menaxhimit të liçenit të Ohrit dhe si thua është organizuar dhe një takim me grupet e interesit në Ministrinë e Mjedisit të Maqedonisë. Unë pata rastin ta lexoj këtë dokument, i cili është akoma draft, dhe konstatova që nuk ekziston, si thua në këtë dokument, një mënyrë e zgjidhjes së menaxhimit të digës të lumit të Drinit që do të garantojë ruajtjen e liçenit brenda këtyre dy kufive, minimumit kritik minimal dhe minimumit kritik maksimal. Dhe theksoj këtë sepse në dokumentat e nënshkruara ose të depozituara në Paris, për dhënien e statusit si trashëgimi natyrore, një nga kriteret është ruajtja, pasi ka një impakt negativ jashtëzakonisht të madh nëse nuk respektohet ky kriter në ekosistem dhe bën, si thua, prishjen e vlerave universale të këtij ekosistemi. Nuk e di, a keni informacion dhe si mund të bëhet që kjo punë të bëhet, si thua, një gjë taksative për të mos pasur. Aktualisht, liçeni ndodhet më shumë se 30 cm nën kuotën e nivelit minimal kritik të lejuar. Duke qenë se plani i menaxhimit që është hartuar nga ana e Global Water Partnership është në fazën e diskutimit për të marrë një komente të gjithë grupeve të interesit dhe për të pasur, si thua, pjesë të saj edhe këtë detyrim që e kemi si rajon në kuadër të statusit që ka marrë tashmë i gjithë pellgu i mbledhjes së liçenit të Ohrit. E dyta që dua të theksoj është që unë pas një çik listën e pjesëmarrësve. Dhe më vjen shumë keq që pjesa më e madhe e institucioneve që kanë të drejtën e vendimarrjes nuk janë pjesë e këtyre trajnimeve dhe si thua një nga sepse jo vetëm kjo, por ka dhe probleme të tjera që ndoshta mund të shtrohen dhe të diskutohen për të pasur një si informacion më të plot, për shkak se edhe diskutimet dhe prezantimet e ekspertëve ishin jashtëzakonisht të mira, me të vërtetë ndihmojnë në dhënien e një informacioni të plot mbi impaktin që ka secili fenomen për atë që po diskutohet, për ruajtjen e një regjimi të ujit dhe varësinë që kanë pyjet me rezervat ujore në këtë rajon. Duke falenderuar, mendoj se kjo është një nga ato probleme që duhet të shikohet dhe në versionin final duhet të jetë shënuar, pasi kjo do ketë jashtëzakonisht impakt negativ për sa i përket statusit të rajonit. Ju falenderoj.
Thank you, Mr. Merori, for your discussion. I'm sorry, the first part and the last part I've heard, but in the middle I had some issues with the translation, but in general, at least I don't know about the rest, maybe they heard all.
I can write something in English, you can have...
But in general, I got your comments.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, but yes, if possible, you can write also some
Yes.
parts in English if some
Yes.
others had the same problems. And yes, you are right, this is something that we need to work on more. But for the participants, I see there are representatives of ministries. Of course, there could be more, but that is always an issue when you have workshops and things like that, that decision makers are sometimes lacking or not willing to discuss certain topics, and
Yes.
that's it. That's why we're trying to present all angles and to see these, let's say, problems, if we can call them like that, from different positions, so we are able to solve them. Of course, the countries here in this region has to do a lot more to come to the level where developing countries are, and that's why all of us are here to try to do the best we can. Thank you for your comments again.
Thank you.
Wojciech, may I add,
Yes.
to Mr. Merori?
Yes,
probably
please.
Probably you know that there is agreement between Yugoslavia and Albania from the 50s about discharge of DRIB.
Yes, I know. I prepare one other version now, and this is the draft is in the table of the both Minister of Environmental and Albania and Macedonia, but not in signing.
Okay, it means that up to now there is a legal act. Yeah,
Yes.
yes, and both countries must follow this act. On the other hand, you know that Prespa Lake and Ohrid Lake are connected through Karstic Mountain, Galicia. We have problems. Also, in Ohrid Lake is not such problem like in Prespa Lake. You know very well. Well, there is decrease of several meters, and public hydroelectric energy company of North Macedonia, you know that they regulate the outflow of the Ohrid Lake in Struga.
Yes.
On the way, and there is they must follow the defined minimum because this minimal level is defined long years ago, as I know, long years ago, and if they bad manage this outflow, then inspector for water can punish them. You know that there are daily measuring of the water level on the Ohrid Lake. Here is Mr. Vasco Stover. He can say something better. But if you with your suggestions for changing of this agreement, then you can suggest rising of the minimal level of the Ohrid Lake.
No.
You can suggest this also.
No, it is impossible because this is decision based in the flora and fauna in the littoral zone.
Yes.
Are a lot of endemic species, and if we decide to have the other level, we can have the problem for this territory and for this flora and fauna which is in this area.
Yes, our biology
First,
suggests
the
it.
second is this document nomination for now is in the UNESCO headquarters.
Okay.
And we have decided this is the minimum and the critical minimum and the maximum level of the Ohrid Lake. I think this level is proposed by the experts based in the situation of the Ohrid Lake. And this presents the maximum measure to have sustainable development or to have all flora and fauna in the good condition.
Okay.
Not this one level statistics, for example. This is the level based on some data proposed by the experts of the flora and fauna on both sides and international consultants. We have 3 years time. We have during the preparation of the nomination for 3 years consultant meetings regarding the some data regarding the water level, regarding the flora, fauna, fish stock assessment, and the other elements which are very important for this ecosystem.
Yes, we know that. But we need some legal act.
So, I before have the position of the Albanian representative in the one joint watershed management committee.
Of course.
Unfortunately, this committee not exists now because before we have 2 regular meetings for 1 year. In this committee are 20 persons, 10 for each part, 3 ministers, all mayors of the municipality around of the Lake Ohrid and Prespa, and experts and the other from and donors community. And we have present everything. We have prepared all documents regarding sustainable development of this area. Because before establish of this committee, Albania and Macedonia signing an agreement from both Prime Minister Albania and Macedonia in June 2004 and ratified by both parliaments in February 2005.
Okay.
Based on this agreement, is Albania and Macedonia have this committee. This is functioned during this period, 2005-2014. And after this, we don't have nothing. And this is the big problem for me to have good collaboration regarding some problems which are in this area. This is the situation.
But on the other hand, we foresters in the basins and our colleagues from national forests, they on sustainable way manage the forest. Be sure. We have only problem with illegal logging. You know that. But on the other hand, there is Galichica National Park.
Of course, this
Part
is in both sides, not only for
Yeah.
the Macedonia.
We know that. We know that. Only this is the problem. On
Yes.
the other hand, our colleagues on sustainable way they manage the forest. Be sure. Be sure because it's a very sensitive
course.
area, a sensitive area, and they don't want to make mistakes. Okay. The problem is on the other side. It is politicians. Politicians what to do.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Jacob.
you. Thank you very much for your discussion and this commenting. Anyone else willing to add something on the discussion between Professor Blinkov and Mr. Meroli, or to general to the topics of the workshop? We've heard from Professor Schuler about payment for environmental services. We've heard about protected forests and things like that, something that we are missing here. So maybe there is an opinion about that too. Or we are doing just fine.
Vojislav, am I allowed to say something?
Yes, Henk, please.
Well, it's not about the topic which was just debated, but it's about the building of dams in the rivers in the region. It has been touched upon a little bit, but not so much. I'm going to share my screen for a moment. Yeah. Because beginning of next year, we are going to publish a toolkit on the use of EU and international legislation, environmental legislation to protect rivers from hydropower. And this toolkit is developed with a number of NGOs, including Euronatur, Riverwatch, and WWF. It is an interactive toolkit which will guide anyone, and you don't need very intensive knowledge about law. You don't need to be a lawyer. It's supposed to be used by people who have not a legal background to see whether the procedures to issue permits for building new dams, whether they have been applied in line with the legislation, and also how to fight the issuing of permits if the procedures haven't been followed correctly. Of course, you could say, yeah, this is EU legislation. It doesn't count for the Southeastern European region, but it does. It does because there are arrangements between accession countries and the EU when it comes to the application of the EU acquis on Water Framework Directive, on the Habitats Directive. And when the EU is supposed, for instance, to fund investments or through the European Investment Bank to support the building of these kinds of dams, then EU legislation has to be followed. And that means that also you need to have been able to show that you have taken into consideration the Water Framework Directive, you have taken in consideration the environmental impact assessments legislation and the Water Framework Directive legislation. So this isn't officially published yet. It is about to be published. This is kind of a final draft. But anyone who is interested, I would suggest to indicate that by email, so we can send it beginning of January when it is officially published to anyone who is interested. Of course, we will make a kind of an information campaign when it's officially published. There will be also a web-based version of it. But I think it's very useful for anyone who is interested in how to stop the incredible amount of plans there are in the region to build new dams in sometimes even still undisturbed rivers, and to see what can be done to at least stop building dams in those areas with a high value for nature, including forest, and with undisturbed rivers. So that's just an addition. And please, I don't know how to organize this. Maybe VoiceLab, they can send their interest to you. They can also send it to me. I can give my email
if you are willing, provide your email
in the chat.
Yes,
so
whoever is interested.
this was just to indicate that this is going to be published soon, to try to at least influence the incredible amount of plans to build dams in still undisturbed rivers in the southeastern European region. So thank you.
Thank you, Henk. This will be a valuable document for sure. And there was questions yesterday about this, so people who are interested can follow this more in details. Thank you again. Anyone else with a comment or question related to the topics we discussed?
Wojciech,
Yes.
I would like to ask Mr. Henk Zijkstra, what about reservoirs for irrigation?
The toolkit is meant to look at the issuing of permits for any kind of dam. Most dams are for hydropower, but I'm not a lawyer as well. I contributed to the toolkit, but when a dam is being built and the amount of water being held by the dam exceeds a certain limit, then a permit is needed. And I don't know from the top of my head how big this amount of water that is being held back by a dam requires a permit. But in any case, when a permit is required, then the procedures for the environmental impact assessment, but also for the Habitats Directive and the Water Framework Directive needs to be followed. So it doesn't matter whether the dam is built for irrigation works or for hydropower. The question is more whether it exceeds the limit for which an environmental impact assessment is needed, and for which also the procedures in accordance with the Water Framework Directive and Habitats Directive are to be followed. So that's the threshold.
Okay, thanks. You know, almost all arable land in Macedonia is located in the region vulnerable to desertification. Agriculture without water is nothing. And agriculture and primary food processing is the pillar of the economy of our country. And as I remember, in Water Framework Directive was written, if anything cause huge socioeconomic problems, some obligation can be derogated or postponed. I am not sure for the term, derogated or postponed.
Yes, you are correct. If there are overriding public interest, I think it's Article 4.7 of the Water Framework Directive. And it's also indicated in our toolkit. And that's why you see so many dams are still being built, despite the objective of the Water Framework Directive to restore ecological integrity of rivers all over Europe. despite this overall objective of the Water Framework Directive, still permits are being issued if there is a proof of overriding public or human development issues that creates the situation that a permit can be issued. Without, I don't know the details, but you can find out in our toolkit as soon as it becomes available. If that counts for agriculture, that remains to be seen, because I believe with the changing climate conditions, there's a need for agriculture to adapt, and there's a need for agriculture maybe to go to different crops. I've seen situations not in Southeast Europe, but in South Europe, in Spain, Portugal, where there's still rice cultivation in areas where I sincerely believe this is should not be possible in situations where there's a lack of water anyhow. But yeah, agriculture, first of all, the question is, will agriculture in many parts where there is increasing drought and an increasing shortage of water still be a viable economic activity? And if it is, what kind of agriculture is still possible? And are the current crops that are being produced still also eligible or possible in the future with a changing climate? So yeah, there are some challenges, not only in forestry, but also in agriculture, on how to adapt to the changing climatological conditions.
Yes, you're right. In the region of Drim-Drini, problem is not huge like in central part of the country. In Drim-Drini Basin, this is humid area. There is no very big problems, except somewhere. But in the central part of Macedonia and then southeast and east, it will be huge problem for future, not only for agriculture, for agronomists to change culture, but also for foresters who work on erosion control and torrent control to protect from flooding and sedimentation, not only reservoirs, but also we have examples, sedimentation on the agricultural land, like everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for this discussion. I don't see any raised hands. So if someone else is willing to say something, please just speak forward or use the option to raise your hand. If there is no one, maybe I can ask if Tasos is here to say some words for the end.
Yes, Vojislav, before closing, I would like to also, another issue that we have identified, let's say, of relevant also to the forest management and with cross-sectoral interlinkages, has to do with the sedimentation. And this is also relevant to the reservoirs of the hydropower plants. And I don't know if any of the esteemed colleagues here would like to maybe have any insights on that, or could point us to any, let's say, related publication on that matter, to what extent it is like significant issue, solutions to address it, like through afforestation or increased coordination between hydropower plants and forest managers.
I can say something. So part of my PhD was sedimentation of reservoirs, as you saw one of the presentations, but also I was included in monitoring of most of the, in a lot of reservoirs, the biggest ones. We did bathymetric analysis for the country, and in the past this was in a law to do monitoring of sedimentation of the reservoirs, and it was done quite frequently until the 1990s. After there's a period of gap of data, and they started a few years ago with the analysis, with the measurements. We did also one other bathymetric analysis of Uza reservoir in Albania, and as far as we know, that was the first one done before. They did some bathymetric analysis in the just near the dam itself, but not the full reservoir. And we did the erosion mapping of the whole catchment to assess where is the sediment coming from and what are the critical areas to do that. Also, for my PhD, I produced a methodology to assess what are the measures should be done and in what parts of the catchment to impose measures for forest protection for in the sense for sediment. So that this is a large part which I was involved in. So if you need something from my studies and you need data, please contact me and we'll talk about it and provide you with what data is available at the moment.
Thank you.
Yes, related to this practice, also what Minchev mentioned is the also reports and the analysis that we have from the World Bank Proffer project about that Uza Lake and how upstream users are affecting the sedimentation and lifespan of a dam, and what measures can be taken, and what also policy instruments can be in place to somehow improve this. One thing was payment for environmental services to the upstream users of the land. It doesn't matter if it's agriculture or forest, in a way to compensate somehow their management if they have to restrict some actions due to this lake or the artificial lakes or the dams that are downstream. So I think that can be also useful documents to look at.
I think Mr. Meroli wants to speak. Please do.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Me që zoti Minchev teksoj që është bërë një studim batimetrik, unë desha të tekstoja që në vitin 2010, me financim të një programi të NATO-s, NATO for Peace, ne kemi bërë batimetrinë e liçenit të Ohrit. Bashkë me një institut nga Athina, IKMEA, dhe ky studim faktikisht jep të dhëna, por nisur nga fenomeni të cilin ne duam të diskutojmë, mendoj se nuk ka impakt, për shkak se të dhëna tregojnë që përsëri niveli i liçenit të Ohrit ngelet në ato karakteristika siç i ka paraqitur në vitin 1975 një studim i bërë me një kompani amerikane nga Instituti Hidrometeorologjik, dhe ky studim mund të gjendet shumë kollaj, qoftë në programin e NATO-s, unë mund t'ju dërgoj edhe website-in, ashtu siç e kam edhe unë një hard copy, ose pranë institutit IKBEA në Athinë. Unë kam qenë pjesë e këtij programi, kam qenë si koordinator lokal, kanë qenë 2 profesor nga Athina, si dhe 2 përfaqësues të Institutit Fizikës Bërthamore, Institutit Hidrometeorologjik në Tiranë, dhe për gati 3 javësh është kryer ky studim në liçenin e Ohrit, duke bërë dhe para prezantimin e tij në 3 dimensione.
Yeah, part of my study were not focused on natural lakes, because natural lakes usually
I know.
A stable system concerning the sediment. And as you mentioned, not big differences are there in the measurements. But concerning the artificial reservoirs, there's a huge differences are coming in just a few years apart. For example, we had the examples here very near to Skopje, one small reservoir, it filled up with sediment in 2 years because it was not assessed good what's the production of the sediment in the upper catchment. So
Yes. Just to add something, may I?
Yes.
Yes.
According to the law on water in our country, there are protection zones around water bodies. Never mind, is it surface water bodies, lakes or reservoirs, lakes or rivers. There are zoning for bathing, according to bathing directive, nitrate vulnerable zone, and also zoning around springs, etc., etc. And with PhD of Mr. Minchev was tried to add additional parameter in this zoning around areas from erosion point of view. And Minchev determines these zones, and it's very important for foresters. And these zones could be implemented everywhere. Now there is one PhD for Tikvesh Reservoir, also colleagues Dragan Ivanovsky, the similar way, and these zones can be implemented also there. Although the core aim of his PhD is something other, but also this zoning can be implemented in all reservoirs in our country. Regarding that was regarding, I don't know, is there any bathymetry of Kukes reservoir? Because it's big reservoirs and catchment below from White Dream, from Kosovo, from Dream downstream from Spilje reservoir in Macedonia. I don't know, is there any bathymetry? Can somebody answer these questions? On Kukes Lake. Somebody from Albania? Do you know? Nothing. Huh? Okay, I would ask Mr. Meroli to send us a link from NATO measuring, from NATO,
Okay.
from this NATO project. You know why? Because we need data for the Prespa Lake. Now I'm a member of this group, national group for Prespa Lake, and we need this data, bathymetry data. We cannot find only one picture, one small picture in GPG, and I would like to see this data about bathymetry. Please send link to Mr. Voislav. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Unë do t'ju dërgoj emailin e zotit ati personit I cili ka qenë project manager dhe që aktualisht punon në Institutin IGMEA në Atin. Ju mund të kontaktoni direkt dhe një kopje të saj ndoshta dhe mund t'ja u dërgoj më njëherë të librin, të publikimin. Unë, më falë, a mundet të theksoj diçka? Nuk e kam informacionin e sakt, por di që me një kredi gati 20 milion euro, Korporata Energjetike e Shqipërisë ka bërë një vlerësim të kaskadave të lumit të Drinit dhe mendoj se një nga elementet që ka qenë pjesë e këtij studimi ka qenë dhe problemi I erozionit dhe impaktit që ka pasur në nivelin e ujit të tre liqeneve të krijuar, liqenit të Fierzës, të Komanit dhe të Bunët, të Vau të Dejës. Nuk e kam sakt, po me sa kam dëgjuar, unë kam një informacion që di që për këtë qëllim Banka Botërore ka dhënë 20 milion euro dhe është bërë një studim i plot për shkak se 80% e energjisë elektrike nisur nga fakti që prodhohet nga kaskada e Drinit e ka bërë si të domosdoshme rishikimin e sistemit hidroenergjetik mbi bazën e këtij studimi. Dhe më duket se pjesë e këtij studimi ka qenë edhe ky tregues. Gjithsesi unë mund të marr një informacion për shkak se kam kontakte me drejtuesit e këtij projekti dhe mund t'ju informoj, ndoshta një ta unë, zoti Blinkov, kam emailin tuaj, kështu që mund t'ju dërgoj një informacion më të plot.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Meroli. Anyone else for a comment? Tassos, do you have something additional to say, or is this a part of your answer to the question you had about the sediments also?
No, it was interesting insights. Thanks to all. So should we be closing?
Yes, if there are no other comments, we should thank the participants for their time and also the presenters for their interesting presentations and for the discussions from the participants. And I think that we'll have more opportunities to discuss issues like this in the future because they are important, not only for these countries, but for the whole region and also for the sectors that are intervened in all of these relations. I have nothing more to say. I wish you good day.
Yes,
If
from my part,
you have also to say something, please.
Yes, I would like to, from my part as well, to also thank everybody who participated in these 2 days, quite full days, and especially the presenters for their useful information. You will be receiving, the participants will be receiving the presentations that were given. Also, we will include an evaluation form for your comments for the way the meeting, the workshop was implemented. And I would also like to take the opportunity to inform all about a separate event we are holding under the project, but it is relevant to the Drin Basin. It's an online workshop on gender issues, on gender and sustainable development, because gender dimensions are always crucial in the context of sustainable development. So you can see even in the chat right now, we have posted the link for that event, and feel free to share it to anyone who might be interested. Again, thank you very much for your participation. We will be in touch with contacting you with the presentations and other material. Also, a background document prepared by CNVP will be available on the Global Water Partnership website, together with the presentations of the workshop. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you from my side also. And see you. Ciao.
Thank you for the workshop. Good day. Bye.
Bye.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.